In 1988, 4-year-old Mari Konno lived with her family in Saitama, Japan. On August 22nd, Mari went to play with another girl in the neighborhood as usual. Saitama was a quiet place, and her friend lived just a few meters away from her house. On returning home from work at around 6:20 p.m., her father, Shigeo Konno, realized that his daughter was not at home. When he asked some neighbors if they had seen the girl, they all said no. She actually had not even gone to her friend's house to play. So after a brief search in the surrounding area, the police were called, and the official search began straight away. Some witnesses reported that they saw a girl of a similar description to Mari getting into a black Nissan with a man who appeared to be around 30 years old. He had dark wavy hair and a rounded face. So authorities began looking for this man, but nothing leading to him was discovered at first. Then Mari's family received a kind of letter, which was actually a note made with cutouts of letters from magazines and newspapers, which read, "There are demons around." Initially, everyone believed it was a bad joke, and the letter was ignored. Then the girl's family received a box with some photos of clothes she was wearing on the day of her disappearance. Inside there were ashes, human teeth, and another note which was also written with cutouts of letters from magazines. "Mary, burnt, bones, investigate it, prove it." According to an expert analysis of this material, the contents of the box did not belong to Mari, which was a relief to the family. They still hoped to find the girl alive, but a few days later, the family received another letter, which stated that the contents of the box were actually parts of little Marie's body. "I placed the cardboard box with Mari's remains in front of her house. I'm the one who did everything, since the beginning of the kidnapping until the end. I saw the police press conference where they said the remains were not hers. Her mother said the report gave her new hope that Mari might still be alive. I then realized that I had to write this confession so that she wouldn't continue to wait in vain. I repeat, the remains are Mari's." The letter was signed by Yuko Imada. This was a fictitious name, chosen because it was an anagram for Yukai Madar, which means the kidnapping demon. New tests were carried out in another laboratory, and this time it was proven that the remains did indeed belong to Mari. It is not clear anywhere in my research how the forensics made a mistake, but this information is in all the sources, so I thought it was important to share it with you. The family could have a proper funeral, but only with the contents of the small box. The family received another letter, which this time explained in sordid and cruel details everything that the child had suffered at the hands of her kidnapper. Just over a month after Mari's disappearance, on October 3rd, 1988, another little girl named Masami Yoshizawa also disappeared. Masami was 7 years old and, like Mari, lived with her family in the city of Saitama. As night fell and the girl did not arrive home, the family informed the local police. A large group of volunteers gathered to try to find her. Hundreds of people were interviewed, but no leads were found. The girl remained missing and no body was found. 2 months later, on December 12th, 4-year-old Erika Namba went to play at the house of a friend in the neighborhood. After playing in the afternoon, Erika left, but unfortunately, she never arrived home. She disappeared on that short journey between the two houses. Maybe you're wondering how these children were alone, left vulnerable like that. So I want to emphasize that this may be because the city of Saitama, at that time in the 80s, was not only small, but was considered to be very safe. As with the other girls, her disappearance was reported and a search was launched. Her body was found 3 days later, in a forest 50 kilometers from where she lived. Her body was wrapped in a sheet. Her feet and hands were tied. Police officers carried out a wide search throughout the forest to find clues that would lead to the killer, but nothing was found. Days later, the family received a letter prepared in the same way as those sent to Mari's family. Erica, cold, cough, throat, death. The authorities began to work on the hypothesis that they were dealing with a serial killer. 3 girls had disappeared in the same region and in similar circumstances. Warnings were broadcast on loudspeakers, warning the population to keep their children at home and watch them closely, especially young girls. Chaos had broken out in Saitama, and local authorities had to discover the identity of the criminal who had become known as the Monster of Saitama. Due to the high level of security and scrutiny in the locality, the criminal stopped and nothing happened for 6 months. On July 6, 1989, a new incident occurred, but this time outside of Saitama. 5-year-old Ayako Nomoto was playing in an Ariake park near Tokyo Bay when she disappeared. 5 days later, the police, who had distributed hundreds of posters with Ayako's description and her photograph, found only her torso, without her head, arms or legs, in a cemetery. 2 weeks later, on July 23rd, 2 sisters were playing near a public laundry in Hachioji. A man pulled up in a car and pulled one of the girls inside. It seems he didn't know there was another girl because he remained with the girl right there in the car. The sister, who was some distance away, saw everything. She ran to her father to tell him what had happened. The father asked one of the neighbors to call the police while he ran to the scene. When he got there, he saw the man taking photos of his daughter. She was terrified, naked in the back seat. The father struggled with the man and was able to detain him until the police arrived. The authorities questioned the man and he initially said that he was not the perpetrator of the other crimes. However, 17 days later, he confessed that he was responsible for taking the lives of the other 4 girls. This man was Tsutomu Miyazaki, born in Tokyo on August 21, 1962. He was the eldest son of a wealthy family who owned a local newspaper. However, Tsutomu was a premature baby and was born with a serious deformity in the joints of his forearms and hands, which caused the bones in that region to be joined together, meaning he was unable to move his wrists. His parents worked a lot, and Tsutomu spent much of his time in the care of his grandfather, always being picked up by his parents at the end of the workday. During his childhood and adolescence, his disability caused him to isolate himself. To hide his hands and wrists, he wore clothes with long sleeves regardless of the weather. He didn't make friends because the children made fun of his appearance and called him cruel nicknames. At school, he was an excellent student. Even with his disability, he kept up with the academic development of his classmates. He attended an expensive school called Midai Nakano High School, which was associated with a large university called Meiji. He started well and was at first considered one of the best students there, but his academic performance began to drop for no apparent reason, and so he was refused entry into the university where he intended to study English and become a teacher. He took a photography course, which was something he also really enjoyed, but he felt like a failure for not having entered higher education. All his high school classmates had secured places at excellent universities. Tsutomu began to spend a lot of time at home and increasingly dedicated his time to watching animes and reading mangas. He became what we call an otaku, a great collector and viewer of all types of anime drawings, series, films and magazines, including violent and pornographic ones. In May 1988, Tsutomu suffered a great loss. His grandfather, who took care of him as a child, died, and this was very traumatic for him. It was so traumatic that in an outburst, Tsutomu ingested his grandfather's ashes, claiming that this way they would both be closer. From then on, he began to develop deviant behavior, even observing one of his sisters while she was taking a bath. When his mother found out about this episode, she gave him an ultimatum. He would have to find work and leave the house. His actions were unacceptable. He then tried to attack his own mother and had to be stopped by family employees. Knowing that he could no longer stay in the house, Tsutomu started doing odd jobs as a photographer and rented a small apartment. He also worked in a stationery store, but this was not that profitable for him, and clearly he would not be able to maintain his usual standard of living. It was at that time, feeling like a total failure, that his life took on a criminal trajectory. After confessing to taking the lives of the 4 girls, a search was carried out in his apartment and investigators found the children's clothes, horrific photos of some of them which focused on their genitals. There were hundreds of mangas and hundreds of VHS tapes of anime, films and even pornography, which ended up earning him the nickname of Killer Otaku. In Japan, the word otaku is used to describe people who are interested in anime and manga. The word describes happy people with healthy addictions, but between 1988 and 1989, the word ended up becoming frowned upon. Japanese society began to associate Tsutomu's taste for anime and manga with his violent behavior, claiming that he became a serial killer due to the content he consumed, which is not true. But at the time, the entire otaku culture was viewed negatively, being seen as capable of turning young people into criminals. During interrogations, Tsutomu confessed that he drank the blood of his victims, sexually abused them, and consumed parts of their bodies after they were dead. He gave information on how he kidnapped all the girls. He also identified the place where Masumi's body was, the only child who had not been located. For Mari, the first victim, he had simply offered her a ride to a cooler place. It was very hot that day, and the girl had accepted. They went to a forest, but Mari was already crying, saying she wanted to go home. There he suffocated the girl to death. After that, he abused her. He took the body home to abuse over the following days. When the smell became unbearable, he dismembered the victim, sending parts back to the family. The second victim, Masumi, was walking alone on the side of a road and accepted a ride home. He went to the same woods where he had gone with Mari some time before. He suffocated her and abused her. However, he reported that the victim's body had convulsed, which left him very scared. Terrified, he abandoned her at the scene and left. The third victim, Erica, was forcibly kidnapped and thrown into his car. He forced her to undress in the back seat and began photographing her. Another car passed nearby, momentarily illuminating Tsutomu's face and causing Erica to scream, something that enraged him. He then strangled her. After that, he took her home, sexually abused her, and after a few days abandoned her body in the woods. The fourth and final fatal victim, Ayako, was approached and asked if she would like to be photographed by him. He said that he was a professional photographer and that he would make a beautiful children's album for the girl. Going to the same location, he murdered the girl, then took her body home. There, he started taking photos, focusing on her genitals, filming and committing further acts of sexual abuse. This was the first victim and the last on which he began to practice acts of cannibalism. When the smell of the corpse was getting strong, he decided to dismember the body. He discarded her head and limbs on a hill in the woods and left the body trunk in a cemetery. On March 30th, 1990, Tsutomu was put on trial. His family refused to pay lawyers to defend him, and his defense was handled by the public service. Tsutomu's father, ashamed of his son's actions, took his own life in 1994. This trial lasted for a long 7 years. The defense claimed that the accused had a mental disorder in an attempt to reduce the sentence requested by the prosecution. He was diagnosed with mental retardation, that was the term used at the time, and multiple personality disorder. But even with these diagnoses, the psychiatrist made it clear that he knew what he was doing and should face the consequences of his actions. That is, he was not an unaccountable person. He had consciously committed the crimes regardless of any mental pathology. On April 14, 1997, the trial was finally concluded, and Tsutomu Miyazaki received the death sentence. On January 17, 2006, the Minister of Justice signed the term authorizing his execution. The sentence was carried out on June 17, 2008. Tsutomu was executed by hanging inside the penitentiary.